afternoon, grinders. Welcome to Lineup HQ Crunch Time Live. Something or I don't even know what this. I don't even know what the show name's called. The pre-lock show for the two-game slate today for the NFL. Two games on Saturday. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD, Blenderhead. Joined with me by Eric Beim4. You can find him on Twitter, Eric Beim4. Two games on Saturday. I know we talked beforehand that we're looking forward to NBA. But there was a time this year that if you told me that there was going to be football on this much on different days of the week, I would have been salivating.
It's funny how the times have changed. Because yes, a few weeks ago, maybe a month, 2 months ago, something like that, I was like, oh yeah, give me Tuesday football, give me Wednesday football, give me Saturday football, and now I'm like, God damn it, another day of NFL games. Like, how many times do I have to talk about Davante Adams? Like, oh God, Davante Adams on a 2-game slate. Thank you, NFL, for making this my Saturday afternoon. But it is a pretty fun slate. I will give it that. The NFL is trying to wear me down with games on every day, but this is a pretty fun slate, I think, for a 2-gamer. So I am looking forward to that at least.
Right, and if people don't know, because you're rarely on the free shows.
Yeah,
I'm always have to gallivant with the unwashed masses, the freebie people on YouTube, which if you like the shows on Rotogrinders, hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit whatever you want. But Eric does the premium Showdown content and Slate IQ for Rotogrinders during NFL. And a lot, the Slate IQ has been great, especially for Showdown. I think it's great for MLB when MLB season is back. Maybe not so. You don't weigh it that much for full slates, but on these 2-game slates, I mean, regardless of the teams that are on, we have a big sample of data on just 2-game slates in the NFL, and your Slate IQ always shows that the most under-owned compared to win probability type of lineup build for large field GPPs are these super game stacks. The stacks where you're taking 4 or 5 guys from a team, you're taking the quarterback and the running back, and it could be that you're only running it back with one guy. You're not running it back with anyone. You're kind of making builds where one team puts up 28, 35, 42 points, and you're just capturing as many of those points as possible and hoping like the other game is like 17-3. And there you go. Because most people, when they build lineups, will, especially on a 2-game slate, because we see people, they don't stack enough on main slates. 11 games, they're taking onesies and twosies types of things. But here on the 2-game slate, they'll go, okay, I'm going to take Josh Allen. I'm going to take Stephon Diggs. I'm going to take Dawson Knox. I'm going to take Cole Beasley. I'm going to take the Bills. And then they're going to find the piece. Oh, well, I'm going to take Aaron Jones. And then I'm going to take this guy. Like, those are the Bills that are going to be like widely used. The ones that aren't going to be used are ones where, like, I'm going to take Drew Lock and 3 receivers.
Yep. I think that was like the main thing that I was going to bring up. You get, I'm not like speaking ill of anybody, but you get people on the 2-game shows and it's like, okay, let's talk about all the plays, right? Who's your favorite running back? And like, that doesn't really matter. Everybody knows Davante Adams is the best play, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, whatever. But what people don't really realize, and I think the last 2-gamer that we had, I can't even remember what day. My days are all so screwed up from this NFL season. Whichever the last 2-gamer we had, that was 49ers Bills, another Bills slate. The Steelers were on it, and that game ended up being pretty much of a dud. And this exact what you just described happened to a T. The guy won the Millionaire Maker with 6 Bills, 5 Bills.
Right, it was a 5-bill slate. But you take a look. But the thing is, you take a look at some of these lineups that come in the top 0.1%. Mm-hmm. They rarely contain some weird guy. They rarely contain some like completely weird guy. Because let's say we get a for instance, I'll scroll down, a Nick Vannett touchdown or a Chris Manhertz touchdown. Like, that may be the only points. We see this in Showdown, where you take that cheap guy and he gets 2 catches for 30 yards. It's like 5 points is still not enough raw to like matter on these slates. I mean, they could. It depends. Obviously, if you have one guy that goes off of 50 points and you have a 5-pointer there, then it works out. So we take a look at those lineups. A lot of times those lineups are that big super stack, and like one of their slots is like leaving like 4,000 off the table. It's like it's imagine this slate, you stack the Packers, and then you have a slot for one bill, and and you have the money for Diggs, but you take Beasley instead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, those are the lineups where if you had Diggs in that spot, it's going to be duplicated 87 times. And the one with Beasley instead and leaving 4,000 on the table is duplicated 3 times, because why wouldn't you pay up? So I think that when you're building lineups, if you're going to do the super stack type of build, like think in those terms. Like think in terms of, if I'm going to run it back with someone from the other side, how do I do that? It's still correlative, but I also leave money on the table.
Exactly. And you kind of started to talk about it. The way that you win, in my opinion, on these slates is almost entirely through roster construction. And the roster construction is what ends up getting you, like the brings in the game theory aspect. Like, there's only so much game theory you can do on a 2-game slate. Everybody's owned, right? Like, yes, certain guys are, looking at our ownership. And, so Curtis Samuel is questionable, right? He's naturally going to be lower owned, and that's fine if you want to like take a stand and that's like your game theory play. But there really isn't this game theory. There's not really that much leverage that you can be gained. But that's why I think that the Slate IQ stuff has been so interesting. It has been not only like super stacking these games, which I think the Bills have been a really interesting use case for that in general this year. So I thought that the fact that they were on this slate is interesting. And the Broncos are a lot more interesting, I think, than people probably give them credit for. But it is tossing in that running back into your, like, nobody, even on 2-game slates, people don't want to play Zach Moss or Devin Singletary with Josh Allen. It's just the natural human hangover effect from main slates, right? I'm not playing Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill together. So when I'm making my 2-game slates, it's just not, if I'm not playing Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to play Aaron Jones. And then I'm going to play my Bills passing game guys. But in fact, a lot of the time that has not been the right way to go. Not only are you allowing yourself to be more unique, doing things like including the running back in your stack, including the tight end in your stack. Like you said, people are certainly going to play all of these tight ends. There's really only like 3 playable ones. But if you include Dawson Knox, especially, then you start doing things like leaving salary on the table, right? You could have afforded Tunyon or Fant in that team, but you play Dawson Knox because you're playing this Bills onslaught. It's very simple ways basically through roster construction that allow you to win tournaments on these slates. And I don't think it's like, sometimes in Showdown, like even you and I have talked about it, in Showdown, you have to do like kind of really seriously negative, like the negatively correlated things, like, are almost way more advantageous. You don't have to go that crazy in these 2-game slates, but that's what you get. You get the people going crazy chalky where their lineup is duplicated 300 times, or you get the people going absurdly off the board, like you said, playing Nick Vannett and backup quarterbacks and 3rd-string running backs. Like, there's a middle ground that allows you to be really successful on these slates. And so I do think all of that part of it is really interesting. And this slate's a really interesting application of it.
So out of the 4 teams, I'm going to assume, based on ownership, that the super stack of the Bills is going to be the chalkiest.
Yeah.
But compared to ownership, what is the super stack that you are targeting the most? I mean, out of the 4, are you going to play Are you going to try to play Josh Allen super stack of the Bills and then try to get different, or are you doing something else?
That's what I'm here to talk to you about. I'm gonna use.
Okay, because I'm playing. But put the disclaimer. I'm hand building. I'm playing 6 lineups. That's all I'm doing, right? Because I'm playing the smaller field stuff, and then I'm playing each of those lineups into the $20 million, whatever it is. But I'm playing contrarian. I can tell you this right now. I will not have Josh Allen. I will not have Aaron Rodgers. So like I'm building from that perspective. I know it's lower probability. I always have to say I know it's lower probability, but I think that I think the pieces on the Packers are good for one-offs better than any of the. I think the pieces on the Bills and the Packers, like you could play Stephon Diggs and he could be the nuclear guy, or Beasley. One of them could be the nuclear guy, and Adams could be the nuclear guy, and then like no one else on the team like puts up enough points.
Yep.
And compared to the salary, like I'd much rather like Bridgewater plus Anderson plus Ian Thomas plus Mike Davis, and then have Devontae Adams in that lineup, or Drew Lock plus Judy plus Fant plus Gordon, and then have Diggs as my one guy from the Bills, or have a running back, or have like Diggs and Moss, or something like. To me, out of all of this, the highest in our projections. Do you agree with this? The highest owned a player on the slate is Aaron Jones at 7,300. Are you all that comfortable? Is it just me, or are you all that comfortable paying? I know it's a 2-game slate, but paying that price when Jamal Williams is there, and like I don't trust Aaron Jones to like. Is he going to put up a score that obviously he can put up? We've seen Aaron Jones even with 60% of the work put up 45 points. So like obviously it can happen, but at that 75% ownership, it seems like that's the easy way for me to just go, well, if he puts up 12 points, like there goes 3/4 of the lineups in my contest.
That was kind of the biggest thing that stood out to me was the Aaron Jones thing. Like, look, I like Aaron Jones. He projects the best, like you said, probability says he's probably the highest scoring running back, or should be in theory in the optimal. But I think there's a lot of fragility to Aaron Jones, which on a 2-game slate is what I'm looking to attack, right? Like Aaron Jones could come out and score 30 points and we wake up tomorrow and lost all our money. But he's a lot more fragile than the kind of guy I want to play at 80, like you said, 75, 80% owned. And I don't even know what he's going to be in like smaller field contests. Like I do like that on these 2-game slates, hopping in these like the second, third, fourth versions of some of these, like the Wildcat and stuff. You get like 100-man fields and it's still really nice top payouts. So I like to do that. And then Aaron Jones, there's only going to be like 10 teams without Aaron Jones. So I like to attack those kind of fragile players. And I do not feel comfortable. Like you do still have to make a sacrifice.
Like the problem with Aaron Jones is that if you don't play Aaron Jones, like look at these running backs. I mean, it's kind of like it's like default. Like, okay, Aaron Jones, they're on the biggest favorite, it's the Packers. But let me add a second part of that. So to get a tier above. Do you see building a lineup without Aaron Jones that doesn't have Devontae Adams either?
Oof. So that's the tougher question. So
someone asked that in chat, because Edgar Chavez is like, how about a GPP line without Adams? Because logically, you would think if the Packers put up points and you fade Adams, you play Aaron Jones in that lineup. And if you fade Aaron Jones, you play Devontae Adams. Do you think there's a scenario? I mean, there is a scenario that obviously there's a scenario where they come out and they only put up 10 points. I mean, obviously, but I'm talking about if they hit their median of 30 points based on, the total of this game, that maybe Adams for their prices. So like Adams has 190 yards and a touchdown. So he doesn't even get the bonus. Aaron Jones has 60 yards and a touchdown. Jamal Williams has 30 yards and a touchdown. And Alan Lazard goes like 3 for 30 with a touchdown. Like it's all Tanyan goes 4 for 20 with, like it's all the Packers get 32 points, but for their prices, like no single one is a must have. Now, obviously in a 2-game slate, they may still appear in the top winning lineup because there's only so many players that there are, but there's no insert player, no cash type of situation there. But I would suspect that they're the 2 most highest owned players. We have 75%, 65% of those 2. Like, obviously, if you fade both of them, like now we're getting into play whoever you want territory. Because you may be one of the few lineups that has neither of them in it. But I mean, that has to be viable. To me, that's that's a lineup that I could potentially make with a Josh Allen, Diggs type of stack. Either because if you don't, you're leaving like 8,000 on the table.
I'm currently playing around with that right now, just trying to see how comfortable I can make something. And like off the top of your head, like when someone says it out loud to you, it feels kind of crazy, right? Because it's like, how the hell do the Packers put up X amount of points without either of those guys being optimal? But I do think this is one of those weird two gamers where this first game, like, could absolutely just be the stone nuts from a fantasy perspective. Like the Bills, the way that the Bills play and the way that they play defense, but the way that the Bills play on offense lends itself to a much higher chance of even if Devontae scores, what did he score last week? Like 25 fantasy points. Even if Devontae scores 25 fantasy points and Aaron Jones scores 15, the way that the Bills play offense, you could still win without those scores, even on a 2-game slate. Is it likely the Devontae thing with 25? Probably not. But the Bills came out last week against the 49ers and or 2 weeks ago, absolutely flat out dominated that team and still threw the ball 40 times. They have games where they just come out and throw 95, like until the game's out of hand, like 95% of the time. Well, but what does that mean? All of these guys can just put up huge fantasy performances for a 2-game slate. The running backs could score 15 points and Josh Allen scores 35, 40, and all the receivers catch a touchdown and score just as many as, right? It's basically Diggs. Diggs has to be the nuclear one at his price. So that's an interesting discussion of Diggs and Devontae. But the way the Bills play makes this so unique to me that I do think like Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams fading both is like legitimately viable. And I don't think I would have said that coming into this slate. But if we're like taking a step back, if I'm picking one, I'm personally picking Aaron Jones as my fade. And I know it's tough because you do, have to play one of these other crappy running backs. But I think these guys have enough upside. These other guys between, obviously Davis, Melvin, Jamal Williams is interesting, I think. As leverage if you don't play Aaron Jones. And then the Bills guys, like if you do want to play Josh Allen and you want to play the Bills guys, they're also interesting.
So would you consider that if you're fading Aaron Jones, that like we're at it's a garbage running back position? I mean, if Mike Davis is going to be 60% owned.
Yeah.
So Melvin Gordon's going to be 45% owned.
Yeah.
Pretty much the Bills running backs are the ones, or Lindsey or Jamal Williams. Like Jamal Williams is still, we still have him projected at 15% owned.
Yeah.
You still have to fill out the running back slots. So like, if you're going to super stack one game, you play the running back in the open running back spot from the other game.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, if you're stacking the first game, he's taking Josh Allen, then that's an Aaron Jones lineup. That's a Mike Davis lineup because you're probably going to put in a running back from that game in there. And then if you're doing the opposite, if you're playing Bridgewater, for instance, you're doing Bridgewater, Adams, Samuel, whoever, if he's in, then that's the type of lineup where you need to think in terms of, well, if Josh Allen fails, if Stephon Diggs fails, and the Bills still get 3 touchdowns, like that's Singletary or Moss, right? So you take the running back from the other game. Yep. There's also builds, if you want to get nuts, by taking 2 running backs from the same team. Because let's say you fade Devontae Adams, you can take Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Or you take Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. Or you take Gordon and Lindsey. You take Davis and who the hell, Robbie Smith? Or maybe you don't go that far.
Yeah, maybe not the Panthers, yeah.
Right, but obviously that lineup construction is, is not many people are going to be doing that. No, so, obviously, just like in Showdowns, like I do these Showdown live shows on YouTube for Rotogrinders, and I constantly talk about this is not optimal. This is how to get to first place in any large field GPP. But there's nothing 2-game slates are at times harder to get to not get duped than Showdown because you don't have the captain multiplier spot. So I'm more likely to find a way where I'm going to be less likely to be duplicated. And that's either, like I first said in the beginning, leaving 5,000 on the table and taking the other guy, taking Gabriel Davis instead of Stephon Diggs in the same type of lineup, or by making these negative, basically you're playing negatively correlated players, like on purpose for the sake of differentiation. But like, to me, I think it's easier to do that by playing Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater than it is to play Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen, because in order for your quarterback to get there, like you have to play. How do you play Rodgers without Adams? How do you play Allen without Diggs or Beasley? Or so? I mean, like you're gonna have to. At least when you play Jerry Jeudy, like, well, if you have Drew Lock and Jerry Jeudy, you don't have to worry about anything. Bridgewater and DJ Moore, you don't have to worry about that as much, and you don't need to have the highest scoring quarterback. As long as you get enough points there, you're probably good.
Yeah, I think, and that's an interesting discussion for, especially based on contest type. I think the easiest being most likely to be optimal, most likely build that a hand builder feels comfortable with is doing something with the Bills, going over the top on a super stack with the Bills, and then getting different somewhere, right? Fading Aaron Jones, fading Devontae, fading both, playing both Broncos running backs, playing, but like the Bills being that the focus of that team. But the team that I do keep kind of coming back to, I will admit to bias against Drew Lock, and I can't do it. I can't do it with Drew Lock. It's just not. You're not
gonna play Broncos?
I'm playing Broncos, but I don't want to click on Drew Lock. I don't want to click. So hold on. I stacked up the Broncos game last week, and so you bet your ass I'm playing Noah Fant again this week, because he left. He had the old bubble guts last week after like 3 plays and cost me a whole wads of cash. So if he doesn't, so if he busts again and goes out early, it's definitely I am the curse for Noah Fant. But I gotta run it back with Fant. So Fant I do really really like. And I also just really like in general a good way. I don't get his price for a 2-game slate. But anyway, I think the Panthers are a super super interesting contrarian kind of onslaught team. You have the Curtis Samuel thing. I think he's going to play, but we don't really know. If he does not play, you just set yourself up for like the best plays on the board with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, and maybe Mike Davis, whatever, without Curtis Samuel, because it's just like going to be just like last week. They didn't quite get there in terms of fantasy production, but without DJ Moore, that volume was so crazy concentrated between Samuel and Robbie and Mike Davis that if Samuel happens to sit, now you just opened up an amazing tournament stack that's going to be way under owned because people are not building for that.
And just to highlight, since we're not going to have that news until several hours from now, since especially on a 2-game slate, you're leaving money on the table type of thing, that like I have no problem. Like what I'm making my lineups as if Samuel is not in. And then giving myself the option based on what happens in the first game, this late swap potentiality. Just I could switch DJ Moore at Robbie Anderson over to Samuel because Samuel's the cheapest guy. I don't want to leave myself with Samuel is 4,800, him not in. And then, well, I mean, I guess I could play Farrell Cooper. I guess I could play Brandon Zylstra. I mean, I'd rather not, but I'm leaving money on the table in most of my lineups anyway. Yeah. But like, I'm not, to me, Samuel is not even playing today until proven otherwise, which is basically the main reason why, like I have two Panthers in every one of my 6 lineups, no matter what, either Davis plus Anderson, Davis plus Moore, or Bridgewater, Anderson. That I have 4 of them. So, I mean, I have Ian Thomas, who knows what happens there at tight end. So like to me, the Samuel news doesn't matter. Just like if he's not in, it just makes my guys better. And if he's in, like they're still fine. And then I have the option of, switching around, and because you would have to expect that Samuel comes in at the lowest ownership because he's questionable.
Yeah. And I think that's what the combination of all these things is what made it the most appealing to me. Like it's not even like you're going crazy off the board and making some like really bad projection play, right? Like sometimes on 2-game slates, you're playing like you feel, we had Alex Smith type like plays on a past 2 game slate. Andy Dalton, right? Like if you're really going to play your vomit stack, the blender vomit stack, like those guys are pretty bad. Those are rough. Those have really tough outs to winning tournaments. This isn't that. Teddy in this passing game can very easily win you this slate. They're clearly going to have to score points against the Packers. So you're not even having to go crazy off the board, but you're also, we talk about late swap all the time. It's certainly not used enough on main slates. This is the one really, really rare 2 game slate where you can use it to your advantage, right? If Curtis Samuel is out, we kind of talked about how you can use it to your advantage then. If Curtis Samuel is in, you can ignore him and just play the other guys, or you can play Curtis Samuel. Like, okay, maybe he's priced around Cole Beasley. Maybe Cole Beasley scored 20 points. I can get, I'll play. And I was playing MVS, but I had money in my lineup. So I'm going to bump it up to Curtis Samuel because nobody's going to play Curtis Samuel and he can, beat the chalkier Cole Beasley. Just one random example, but it provides you're going to gain all that information from this first game and from the really popular Bills. And then you're going to be able to use it to your advantage, right? If Cole Beasley, he's probably the main example in that price tier because he's very similar to Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore. If Cole Beasley goes nuts, then okay, now we got to start thinking about some swaps and how do we try to still chase down a min cash here. If Cole Beasley busts, it's like you just set yourself up. Now you have all this information about what's going on with Curtis Samuel, and you have a leg up on the what are we projecting Cole Beasley for? 40% ownership, the third highest owned wide receiver, which is kind of nuts when you think about it. Like I like Cole Beasley, but he's always been the guy on the 2 gamers that's like way under owned. He's the guy that's 15%. He's not the guy that I want to play at 50%. So it's a long way of saying I think the Panthers provide a really interesting strategy that, like, as it stands right now, I don't know what way I want to approach the Panthers. But once we get that news, right, and once we get the information from what happens in that first game, that's when we can kind of pounce on how we want to attack them.
Okay, so let me give you even more credence to go with your Panthers. Okay, Josh Allen, we have currently projected owned 39.8%. Bridgewater 18.5%. Okay, that's the difference. Let me ask you. You haven't looked. I just did on the DK Sportsbook for the prop. What's the difference in yardage between Teddy Bridgewater's passing prop and Josh Allen's passing prop? What would you guess?
Oh man. 45 yards.
1 yard.
What?
Josh Allen's passing prop on DK Sportsbook is 270.5. Bridgewater is 269.5.
Wow.
Aaron Rodgers is at 296, so he's the highest.
Yeah.
And then obviously Drew Lock is down at like 240 something or whatever. So like I look at that and I go, well, the DK has their own algorithms or whatever. And like you'd expect the Bills to pass more, but like I'm not saying that Josh Allen's a bad play. I'm looking at like, well, what's the difference between that and Teddy Bridgewater? Like if the Packers start putting up points in this game, like they're gonna have to throw. I mean, that you want in the case that you're playing Teddy Bridgewater, you want the Panthers to go down because once the Panthers go up, they slow the game down to the point of stupidity. Right? They're one of the slowest teams in all of football.
Yep.
You want the Packers to go up. You just have to pick the right piece of the Panthers. So like I think it's so much better from a lineup construction perspective with ownership to fade Jones or Adams. One of the two. Take your choice. And then play that in a Bridgewater stack. And you're already eliminating 65+% of lineups if one of the 2 Packers guys, is a dud or doesn't put up enough. And that you're playing a lower owned. It's going to be the third, like from a stack perspective, the Bills are going to be number 1, the Packers are going to be number 2, the Panthers 3, and the Broncos 4. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense. It goes by the team totals. I mean, like, we're not saying anything that like, yes, that's what it should be. But like there's a way to play Devontae Adams or Aaron Jones in a lineup that without Rodgers or any of the other Packers. In the same way that there's a way to play Diggs or Beasley in a lineup without Josh Allen in it. It's Drew Lock, and you use one of those guys as the guy to bring it back with. And
Yep.
like, that's your lineup. And then you just have to hope that, condensed in that one place for that team. And you're busting a lot of lineups that have, like, Robert Tonyan has 3 points, right? And he's 40% owned in the tight end spot. And Alan Lazard is 15% owned, and he has garbage. And and people tried to stack the Packers, and it's like, nope, all you needed was Devontae Adams, and you didn't need anyone. All you needed was Aaron Jones. You didn't need anyone. All you needed was Stephon Diggs. You didn't need any of the Bills. And then based on salary, you could still leave money on the table, even doing that. And now you have a much more unique lineup that still makes sense. We're not talking about it. I mean, it still makes sense. And then at the defense position, I mean, a lot of people, I love playing the defenses against my quarterbacks on these slates. Love, because that's people don't realize it's positively correlated. They think of it as a negative. No, it's positively correlated because you want the pick six. When I'm playing the Packers defense against Teddy Bridgewater, I want him the first pass of the game to throw a pick six. So he gets the ball back, and now they have to throw more. So, and then if there's no pick six out of any of the defenses, if there's no outlier score, none of them matter. It's just right, 7 points, 5 points, 3 points. There's no outlier results, so it's not going to really matter what the correlation or anything. But people build that way, or people with optimizers. If you're on Lineup HQ, on these 2-game slates, you want to go in and set and make sure the max offense versus defense is not set at 0, or it'll eliminate all those types of lineups. I set mine to 3, 4. It doesn't even matter. It's I could play 5 guys against my defense. Who cares? I mean, if none of the defenses score a lot of points, then whatever I get, I get.
The interesting thing to me about that is not only is it a positive correlation, not only does it set up your quarterback for success, which people don't get that, right? But how many, Jameis Winston's got to be the poster boy for this, right? Come out, throw a pick six on the first play or the first drive, and then he throws for 500 yards because they fall down so fast. But not only does it do that, if so let's use Drew Lock and the Broncos as an example. It's an interesting one for this slate. If Drew Lock comes out and throws a pick six right away, and you play the Bills defense, you obviously probably have just stumbled on the best defense play of the slate, and now Drew Lock has to pass more. But if you say only bring it back with one Bill, all these Bills are going to be popular, mainly Diggs and Beasley, right? But even Gabe and Knox and these other guys will get ownership. But you just play Diggs or you just play Beasley, everybody that has multiple Bills is now screwed. Not only did they lose a possession, now they're going to be ahead, more likely to be ahead for the entire game. So it's super negatively correlated with the chalky Bills skill player that you're fading, and super positively correlated with your low owned stack. So I think it's a really strong tournament play that people, look, I get it, because on a main slate, I'm not doing it really either, certainly not in my 1 to 5 teams that I play. But it's another one of those people carry it over, right? I don't want to play my running back with my quarterback because I don't really do it on main slates. And then I don't want to play my defense against my quarterback because I don't really do it on main slates. We have to treat this is a very different beast we're playing here, right? In this 2-game, we have to adjust to that. So that's another caveat, another little thing that I really, really like on these slates. And then those are the big things, like super stacking, using my running backs and tight ends smartly from within my stacks. That's an easy way to get unique, and defenses against quarterbacks. Those are some of the clearest things that I've learned this. I've even learned a lot about it this year doing Slate IQ and kind of studying these smaller slates. They're really easy ways to get super unique, super unique. But they're not. You're not actually having to make worse teams, and a lot of times you're making better teams.
Right. You don't have to get unique by playing a guy that's going to get 4 snaps at the wide receiver 5 position, right? You're not going to need that. Edgar, let's see. Only Ruben asks, on a 2-game slate, are you more likely to run 100% wide receiver flex? To me, my answer is it has nothing to do with the 2-game slate. It has to do with the fact that running back sucks.
Yeah, the answer is yes, right? To ignore the 2-game slate part, the answer is just, wide receiver flex, because running backs are awful. I don't even want to play any running backs tomorrow, not to get ahead of this 2-gamer. I don't want to play any running backs tomorrow. I wish I could play all wide receivers. So I also think it's better for just on two gamers. The trend has just skyrocketed on the top 0.1%. Top lineups having wide receivers in flex and tight ends too. It's just running back is plummeting and the other positions are rising, but it also helps you set up more stacks and more like bigger stacks. The wide receiver, the more wide receivers you have, the more you can stack up one of the games, or the more you can stack up one individual team, as opposed to the old, 5 years ago, I have to play 3 running backs type of build that everybody became somewhat accustomed to.
Right. But essentially on these 2-game slates, in a perfect world, if you were able to, if you could get all the touchdowns in your lineup, you win.
Yeah.
Like essentially you're looking for the big events. The problem is like it's the same thing as a main slate of 11 games. Like if you get the highest score at every position, if you could pick them out from one game and this and what, but it's hard to do. It's hard to do that. So this could be a Zach Moss touchdown, a Devin Singletary touchdown, and Jamal Williams. It could be a 3 wide. Maybe it's a 3 running back build that wins, and it's the 2 Bills running backs and Jamal Williams. And you look at that lineup and you go, how could I have possibly played that line? But no, that's what you should be doing, right? If you're looking at your lineup and going, I think I made a mistake. There's a limit to that. I mean, if you're putting in guys that, I'm going to leave 20,000 on the table and I'm going to play Dominic Daphne, who I don't even know who that is. He's like the 4th wide tight end for the Packers. I don't even know if he's active. And you're doing that. I'm doing double tight end with Reggie Gilliam and Andrew Beck. Like, no, you don't have to. That's now we're getting a little off the reservation. But if you're looking at your lineup and you go, this doesn't make me feel good, like that's probably a good GPP lineup.
Right. And when you it's so crazy for people to hear. I say that, like, when someone says I'm afraid to fade, like I have buddies, and they'll be like, yeah, but I just can't fade so-and-so. Like, how do you fade so-and-so? Like the moment you said that is the moment you probably should fade him. Because it's like if everyone says that, if everyone says how the running backs stink, how can I not play Aaron Jones? He's guaranteed to score double-digit points. Like, well, yeah, I get that. That's what everybody thinks. And if he scores double-digit points, I don't give a shit. Like I don't really care if he scores double-digit points. I'm trying to win tournaments, So those little human element things are always really interesting, and like way worse on 2 gamers, and it just creates all these. So you talked about duplicate lineups. I mean, there's so many duplicate lineups, especially in, I focus a lot more on smaller fields. I don't know how many of the, viewers, listeners are, playing the MME contest versus the smaller field stuff. The smaller field stuff I found to be just super advantageous on 2 game slates because of that. Like that is even more prominent. Like in those big field contests, like you definitely get the people going absolutely crazy and people doing things that we're doing, and the really sharp players playing 150 teams, and they are doing a lot of these things that we're talking about. But you get into 100-man, 200-man fields, it's like there's like 5 lineups that are duplicated 5, 10, 20 times each, and then you get a bunch of other super chalky lineups. So just kind of the similar trend that you just don't really have to get that crazy, and you can get a huge leg up, like tons of massive positive EV on these slates.
Edgar Chavez asked, would y'all consider touching any of the Panthers tight ends?
Oh, well, I mean, Ian Thomas is not a bad 2-game slate tight end. I don't think throwing him in there with Teddy.
Right. Rob Collin asks, I know I want to leave money on the table, but how much is people always ask, how much is too much? If this is different, right? There's no number. This is what I think of. For most people that aren't used to doing this, if you're uncomfortable with the amount of money left on the table, then you're good. Because most of the time, people like they underestimate it, right? That like I'll do Showdown and I'll like that they'll show me a lineup. I left 2,300 off the table. Is that too much? I go, no, you're not even close to too much. Like, right? I mean, I played lineups that left 12,000 on the table. So like it's all in the eyes of the lineup construction. But probably on this slate, I would say you're probably not leaving more than 7,000 or 8,000 at max. But I don't even think you have to leave that much. It's more the fact of like where you could play instead of playing a high price guy, you're playing like the lower price guy. So you're it's the same construction, just you're spending 46,000 and not 50,000 type of thing. I don't think you're building a 38,000. Right. I mean, you just want more points at that point, right? Like at some point, you're like, well, why am I not taking Devontae Adams here and just getting 25 points?
Yeah, because you still do people. You still do need the raw points,
right?
And guys like Devontae Adams provide you with the raw points. There are certain lineups that it makes sense to not play Devontae, obviously, but if you're leaving, if you don't have, especially like you don't have Aaron Jones and you're leaving 6,000 on the table and you can get Devontae Adams, like probably should just get Devontae.
Right,
Adams.
like if you're in a flex spot, you're like, I'm going to play Mercedes Lewis here instead of Devontae Adams. That may not be may not be it. And Daryl Hodgkin says that we just have to play because of the Mariota showdown lineup.
Oh yeah,
we just have to play Barkley and forget about it.
Barkley, yeah. I don't even know who the backups are. Yeah, he's the backup. Oh man, he stinks. We got to play. Is PJ Walker still the backup for Teddy?
for the Panthers?
Yeah, XFL, the former XFL legend. Maybe I'll throw one PJ Walker team in there. There you go. Teddy likes to get hurt. Teddy's been hurt a lot.
Eric Johnson asks, would you play Lindsey and Gordon in the same lineup?
Yes.
I mean, you can. Yeah, why not? Mm-hmm. That's more of a large field play, though. Like, I don't think you need that in smaller field contests. No. But I'm less likely. Like, would you? This makes intuitive sense that if you're going to play two running backs from the same team, you have to assume that they're winning.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to think in terms of this team is ahead by not even by so much, but if Gordon gets a touchdown and Lindsey gets a touchdown, like none of the Broncos wide receivers probably have one. And the passing game, like the Allen stacks fail. Like in that, like if the Broncos are running so much that both of them have touchdowns, like probably the Bills passing game isn't working very well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely, I think it's really viable in some of the like Panthers builds that we talked about. I actually really don't mind at all Melvin and Lindsey, just because of, so that's kind of a weird game. Like the Broncos kind of don't want to expose Drew Lock typically, until maybe it's too late. And they've gotten down, and they do want to, team establish the run, and running back is really thin. I think it's one of the more, it's not a high probability, but in terms of two running backs from the same team being optimal, it's probably one of the more likely of that scenario. So I do like it, and I think it also creates that leverage that you talked about, right? Some of the Broncos will be owned, particularly Noah Fant, and then it's really hurting. Maybe a Bills wide receiver will get there, but it's really hurting the Bills stacks.
Right, and you could say the same thing with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't, to me, in that lineup, you don't play Devontae Adams.
No, that's a pretty interesting way to fade Devontae, though.
Right, but I mean, it makes sense. Or if you're playing, Singletary and Moss, you don't play Stephon Diggs in that lineup.
Yep.
Right. So I mean, just think logically. A lot of people talk about, well, how do I know a negative correlation or a positive correlation? A lot of this is just that. Think common sense of like, if you need, whenever you place a person in your lineup and you're playing GPP, you have to go in going, okay, this guy's going to hit a ceiling. Like you can't think in terms of like, well, this guy gets me 10 points. No, like how does this guy get a flame emoji on the DraftKings screen? And if he has a flame emoji, who's more likely not to have one? Right. And then if you put another guy in there, you're like, well, if Aaron Jones has two touchdowns and Jamal Williams has a touchdown, what's the likelihood that Devontae Adams has two touchdowns also? Well, it goes down. Yes, the Packers could put up 49 points. They could put 7 touchdowns. You're right. It can happen. But it's less likely now because you've jammed in 2 of their running backs. That's what correlation is. So any last minute questions on the YouTube? Hit the thumbs up button or thumbs down. I think the YouTube algorithm doesn't matter. I think if you could hit the thumbs down, you're fine. I really don't think it matters. I've read it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. But hit the subscribe button. You could always sign up for Rotogrinders Premium. We have a new combo package, right? It just came out. Now, if you're just playing one sport, you could just buy one sport. So if you want premium for NBA coming back, you don't have to worry about anything else. Just pay for NBA. It's a lower price. But if you want everything, NBA, NFL, PGA, MLB, college football, college basketball, MMA, soccer, tennis. I'm missing out on sports. There's probably other sports, esports, everything. That's all in one package. So you get Lineup HQ, you get all the projections for all the sports, all the content, all the everything. It's an all-in-one package. So there's a link in the description. You get $10 off your first month by clicking on that link and going sign up for premium. And if you just want one sport, we have NBA. NBA starts in 4 days.
NBA already started.
4 days.
It already started. It's preseason.
I don't count
Almost over.
preseason. Doesn't start for me yet. It starts in 4 days for me. Right, the 22nd. But the first slate is like a 2-game slate, so like that's gonna be kind of garbage. But the 23rd, that's when 5 minutes before lock, you start pulling your hair out of your head. Right. Oh, it's okay. Everything looks perfect. Then 12 minutes before lock, this guy's out, that guy's in. Little gerbil on the wheel and on the keyboard, the monkey on the keyboard. That's what it is. Okay. So, Eric, we're going to be back next Saturday. There's another 2-game slate next Saturday. Can football be over yet? Then we're going to have playoffs. We're probably going to be doing that as well. So as I always say, if you're in my contests, I want to win first. Eric's probably not in my contests. You're probably playing some $1,500 whatever thing. Like, are you even playing? I think I'm in the spy. I think I'm in the $100 spy.
No, so I'm just in. I'm pulling it up right now. They had like some secondary wildcats.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I didn't play them.
They were pretty good. I mean, I'm in. I tossed my $20 lottery ticket in there, into the millie, and then I'm just donating.
Right. Well, that's what I why not? You never know.
It's fun.
I'm building contrarian as it is, so it doesn't matter. So Eric, so good luck to you in your contests. Good luck to me in my contest. And if you're not in my contest, good luck to you people out on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button. And there's been another episode. I don't know what the name of the show is. How do I get out of here? How do I say that this has been? It's the Lineup HQ / pre-lock live before grinders crunch time on Rotogrinders.com.